Let's start with you, David. You know ins and outs of Trump and the organization and the people who worked for him. This is not a name, McConney, that a lot of our viewers will be familiar with. It is still a new and an emerging name. Who is this guy?
Well, this is a very small organization that Donald Trump runs at the top. And directly under Donald is his finance guy, Alan Weisselberg, who knows where all the bodies are buried and all the money is. And right beneath him is Jeffrey McConney. And that he has come before the grand jury, which under New York law means he has immunity for anything he testified about, transactional immunity, indicates that they are trying very hard to flip Alan Weisselberg, because that's where he would be most helpful to them in all likelihood, is what did Alan Weisselberg knows, which is everything. And it will be much easier to make a case, whether it's a garden variety tax case or, as I believe is highly likely, a New York State racketeering charge.
Let me ask, let's go a little deeper into this, Joyce, this transactional immunity. The New York Times reporting that under state law, witnesses such as Mr. McConney, who appear before the grand jury, are granted immunity on the subject of their testimony. They cannot exercise their Fifth Amendment right to refuse to answer questions on the grounds that they may incriminate themselves. Tell me what that means and why that is significant to this testimony.
This is different from federal grand jury practice, and it's really important in this situation because it means that McConney testified in the grand jury without the ability to assert a Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination. He already had immunity. He had no further risk. The problem that he faced in that setting, though, was if he failed to answer truthfully, he could be prosecuted down the road for perjury. And of course, we know that Cy Vance has at least 8 years of Trump's tax records and underlying documentation. So it's possible that Mr. McConney was asked to explain much of that paperwork, effectively putting him in a box. And here's why it matters. McConney, it looks like, is not the target for prosecution here. Possible that he has a deal with prosecutors already and that he's cooperating. But this is clearly a tightly knit corporation, and one can imagine how awkward it would be to be cooperating and then to go into work the next day. So prosecutors are looking up the chain here. They're looking at Alan Weisselberg. It's possible that McConney had testimony to offer directly about perhaps one of the Trump children or the former president himself. But this is all building up so prosecutors are able to take a hard look at the people who they believe are most culpable for whatever criminal conduct may have occurred.
So that's a good question, David. The culpability. To some degree, McConney's been with Trump for a long time. So is Weisselberg. Weisselberg was with Trump's father. These people are loyal to, or have been in the past, loyal to Donald Trump. You often point out that loyalty with Donald Trump only goes one way. He'll throw anybody under the bus if it suits him. So what do they have that would cause McConnell to talk? Is it just McConney to talk? Just the idea that this guy has seen how the business runs for more than 3 decades and can explain that to them and tell them what Weisselberg probably knows or saw?
Well, I'd say there's a high likelihood that prosecutors have something on McConney that is unrelated to the testimony they need for the case they're trying to build on Trump, the Trump Organization, and some others. So being around Donald Trump for a long time, there's a fairly high likelihood that he is engaged in some other kind of behavior that gave the Manhattan prosecutors some leverage on him, apart from the testimony he's given that he has transactional immunity for. This is a man who's been with Donald longer than I've known him, and I've known Donald for 33 years, so he has a very long track record with him. And Donald mentioned him in one of his books as the guy who was to check invoices to make sure Donald wasn't being cheated. I think there's pretty good evidence that Donald has been cheated out of lots of money over various deals over the years. And that also makes me wonder about what it was that got the prosecutors to feel confident that granting transactional immunity to McConney was going to be useful to building their case.
Joyce, you and I probably talk about this case about once a week, and our viewers who probably have better legal knowledge than I do are probably curious as to where we are in this process. From your reckoning, where is this in the process? Do they just keep on gathering evidence until they have enough to either move forward with or decline to do anything with?
That's really the point that prosecutors are at here. They're looking towards making a prosecutive decision. Do they go? Do they decide that there's some sort of an evidentiary failure, or maybe even that they just can't find any crimes that were committed? But this special grand jury that Vance has summoned goes through November. It can be extended. And as a prosecutor, you're often not working on the clock. You don't set an artificial deadline. You just keep investigating to the point where you're confident that you either have sufficient evidence to indict or you realize you're at a dead end where you can't. But this grand jury was summoned after an intensive investigation of a lot of financial paperwork, tax paperwork, and now they're talking to the controller, the guy who knows the day-to-day operations. It looks like they're getting ready to go.